Did you know there was an official Spongebob Squarepants toy where you could grow real-life plankton in your home? Well, probably not, because this elusive product didn't sell very well, and so it was only on the market for a very short time before being pulled from the shelves and completely discontinued altogether. As far as brine shrimp pet products are concerned though, this is one of the most unique I've ever come across, and it's actually a bit of a hidden gem in this hobby, so I'm really excited to uncover its mysteries with you guys today. The Spongebob Plenty O Plankton set was released by Imperial Toy in 2007. It was the franchise's first and only entry into the instant pet market, but they have had a line of bikini bottom themed aquariums and ornaments designed for betta fish over the years. This is quite different though, as it's the first time Nickelodeon has ever sold real live animals. I found this unopened set on eBay for $24, which I thought was a decent price given its age. Now, you might be wondering how much this retailed for back in 2007. Well, I was too, and after scouring the internet high and low to find out more information about this kit, I couldn't find much. It seems its existence has largely been erased from the internet. The most interesting thing I came across was this packaging variant, where it appears that the tank is sold all on its own without any of the packets or accessories. A bit odd. I mean, it's so small, I don't really know what else you could use it for. Let's take a closer look at the packaging so we can learn a little bit more about this elusive product. The front of the box has the Nickelodeon and Spongebob Squarepants logos in the top left corner. Coming over to the middle are the words Spongebob Plenty O Plankton Tank. Down here it mentions that with this kit, we can help Plankton take over the world by growing his plankton army. I really like this approach of using one of the show's well-known characters to tie it in with the actual animals. It's definitely a smart idea. In the middle we have a large cutout showing the pirate-themed contents of this kit, which we'll look over in more detail shortly when I open this up. The top and sides of the box are all the same, showing Plankton looking cunning and mischievous. It's kind of fun that we're taking the role of the antagonist's accomplice here, something you don't see too often, especially with toys. Turning over to the back, and we have some photos of the package contents and instructions on how to set everything up. These will be important to reference later, as I don't believe there's any kind of instruction manual that comes with this kit. Okay, let's open this up and take a closer look at what tools we have to help Plankton in his cunning plan. This box here is a little beat up after sitting around for 15 years, but it looks like everything inside is still in great condition. First up we have 3 different pouches. The first is a water purifier packet. The second has the instant live plankton eggs, and the third is the growth food. The back of each packet gives some more detailed instructions about how to use them. The idea and whole concept here is clearly inspired by sea monkeys, just with a bit of a SpongeBob pirate themed twist. Now, I'm unsure if the eggs in this package are still viable, because as I mentioned earlier, they're 15 years old, but we're still going to give it a shot and try and hatch them today. Next up we have a feeding spoon which is in the shape of a shovel. I love the unique design approach here. It does well to add to the pirate theme. My only concern with it is that the scoop is a little on the large side. And here's the Plenty O Plankton tank. It's small and rectangular, its shape made to look like a pirate treasure chest. The volume appears to be somewhere around 350 mils or 12 ounces, which isn't particularly large, but pretty standard for this product niche. The lid of the tank has a square SpongeBob-esque skull and crossbones, with his signature large front teeth too. It even has SpongeBob's freckles, which is funny to see that they've somehow penetrated through to the bone. The base of the tank isn't particularly interesting, but it looks sturdy enough. The interior is my favourite part. The substrate is rough and textured to look like yellow sand, which will be really important for facilitating algae growth. There's also small SpongeBob and Patrick figurines in there too, with them both wearing pirate outfits. I think these look great, and overall the tank is a well thought out design, though I am concerned that there may be some small gaps between the yellow plastic substrate and the walls of the tank where baby plankton could potentially get stuck. It's something to keep an eye on, but hopefully it won't be an issue. You've probably also noticed the cardboard backdrop. Using this is optional, so I'm going to take it out for now. Okay, let's finally set this thing up and see if we can get these old eggs to hatch. I'll start off by filling the Plenty O Plankton tank with distilled water. The instructions on the back of the box mentioned the option of using boiled tap water too, but I don't recommend doing that, as it often has additional additives which can be harmful to brine shrimp. There's no water level fill line on here, so I'll just take an inch or so from the top. Next up I'll add in the water purifier packet. They've gone for quite an interesting approach by keeping its contents in a resealable bag, which looks to have worked really well for keeping moisture out. I had a quick look with my microscope here to see what the contents of this water purifier is, and it appears to just be salt without any of the plankton eggs. I'm only supposed to add in 20 spoonfuls or around half of this pouch into the tank. Exact salinity levels aren't particularly important for brine shrimp though, so I'm just eyeballing it here. I'll give everything a quick stir with the spoon to dissolve all of those salt crystals. The spade end of the spoon isn't quite designed for this purpose, but it gets the job done. I'm now supposed to wait 24 hours before adding in the second pouch, the instant plankton eggs, so I need to find a home to keep this tank while we wait. Indirect sunlight is really helpful for raising brine shrimp, so this windowsill should be a good spot. It's currently winter here in New Zealand, so I need to use a heat source for this tank. My preference here is usually to use a submersible aquarium heater, but this lid doesn't really accommodate the use of accessories particularly well, and I like the way it looks, so I'm just going to use an under tank reptile heat pad instead. I'll also put some grow lights next to the Plenty O Plankton tank to help kickstart algae growth. Alright, that's all for now. I'll check back in with you guys tomorrow to add in those eggs.
The next day.
Hey guys, it's been almost 24 hours since yesterday's setup, so it's time now to add in the second packet, the instant plankton eggs. I don't know why they call these instant, because they'll take at least another day before the first ones hatch. There's another small sealable bag in here. This time the contents appear to just be pure brine shrimp eggs. The back of the packet here says to add in 2 spoonsful, which should be somewhere around 1/4 of them. But since these eggs are around 15 years old, I'm going to add the whole lot into the tank in the hopes that even just one of them is still viable and manages to hatch. Old eggs often don't last this long, so I'll keep my fingers crossed and give you guys another update in a few days.
Several days later.
Hey guys, I've got some great news to share. So I've been patiently waiting for the last 6 days since we added in those eggs, and I've been eagerly checking on the tank daily for signs of life. And this morning, after having a good look, I spotted the first plankton babies swimming around in the tank. I told myself that I'd wait a full week before giving up, because I've heard that older eggs often take longer to hatch, so I'm stoked that I waited, because my patience paid off. It's quite incredible really. 15 years of sitting in a packet, and somehow a few of those old eggs have survived. So now that we have our first baby brine shrimp, I have a bit of a surprise for you, because there's another animal I'm going to add into this tank too. Perhaps you've wondered at some point where the inspiration for Plankton's character design came from. Well, I can assure you, he isn't based off a brine shrimp. He's actually supposed to look like a copepod. Copepods are tiny planktonic crustaceans found in both freshwater and marine ecosystems all over the world. They're sometimes called cyclops because of their single eye in the middle of their heads. It just so happens that copepods make great tank mates for brine shrimp. I currently have a bunch of them in one of my DIY tanks. I found a few of them crawling around in a local rock pool and decided to just put a couple in there a few weeks ago, and now there are thousands of them because of how quickly they reproduce. So I'm going to transfer a few over into the Plenty O Plankton tank now using a pipette, and we can see if they manage to expand their population over the next few weeks.
Wonderful.
I'll give you guys another update in a few days when it's time for their first feeding.
The following Thursday.
Okay, good morning guys. It's time now for another update on the Spongebob tank. It's been 5 days since I noticed the first babies in here, which means we can finally give them their first feeding. You'll notice that even more have hatched in the last few days, and there's around 10-ish babies in there at the moment. I'm not sure if all of these guys will survive, but 10 is more than I was expecting to hatch from those old eggs, so anything that manages to make it to adulthood will be a huge success in my book. Now, before I feed them, I want to clean things up a little. There are hundreds of unhatched eggs in here, and it just kind of makes the tank look dirty, so I'm going to do my best to remove a bunch of them using a turkey baster, and then fill the tank back up with nice clean salt water. I'm also going to take this time to aerate the water too. Usually I'd use an air pump, but because the lid that came with this tank can't really sit properly with an air line going underneath it, I'm just going to use this Sea Monkey Aqualeash pipette with an air stone on the end of it to give them some oxygen. This isn't quite as efficient as a permanent air pump, but it's better than nothing. Alright, so feeding. The third packet that came with the Plenty O Plankton kit is called growth food. I can kind of see its yellow colour oozing through the back of the packet here, so I don't know what kind of condition this is going to be in. Surprisingly, the powdered food here does look okay. It still appears to be completely dry too, which is a great sign. The directions on the back of the packet say to feed 1 full spoon of the yellow growth food once per week. From my experience, that's probably a bit too much, so I'm only going to feed them a fraction of that today. They should hopefully start growing a lot faster now. I'll check back in with you guys again in another few weeks from now for another update and my final review.
1 eternity later.
Hey guys, I'd kind of forgotten about this tank recently, but I had a look at it today and it appears that our plankton army is now fully grown. It looks like most of them have made it to adulthood and there's around 9 or 10 in there, which I think is a decent turnout. I've seen 2 mating pairs in there this morning too. This is a good sign that they're happy and healthy. You'll notice that the tank is looking quite green now. I think there's so much algae floating around my house from all of my other aquariums that it seems to seed really easily whenever I start a new tank. I've barely been feeding these guys their growth food because of it. Something interesting you might have seen is that there's some hair algae growing in there too. I don't quite know when that appeared, but it's currently in a few of my tanks, so it's not really too surprising to see. Sometimes it appears that the plankton get temporarily stuck in it, which can look worrying, but they always seem to manage to wriggle themselves free. I don't think this is an algae species they can eat though, but I do occasionally see some of the copepods sitting on it. Speaking of which, while there definitely are still some copepods in this aquarium, their numbers haven't really increased the way I expected them to, although in my experience, that usually only happens once the walls of the tank get covered in algae, which this one doesn't have quite yet. There are plenty of small ciliates though. With my macro lens, I can see thousands of them crawling around the tank walls, which is really cool to see. These little vacuum cleaners are a great natural cleanup crew. I should also note that the brine shrimp definitely aren't eating any of the copepods or ciliates either. I mean, they are very small, but they're still way too large to fit in the tiny mouths of brine shrimp, so they both make good tank mates. Over the last 6 weeks I've come to really appreciate most things about this tank, though there are a few features I would change. Firstly, the shape. I think they nailed it here. It has nice flat surfaces which makes it easy to view the plankton as they swim around the tank. The Spongebob and Patrick figurines are well designed too. They make the tank more fun and their size is spot on. Brine shrimp can often get caught in small aquarium decor, so their smooth texture was a good choice. The plastic sand substrate at the bottom of the tank has been great for algae growth. I mean, it's looking a little more green than yellow now, but that's the hallmark sign of a healthy tank. It does appear that small objects like eggs, algae and copepods can fit between the plastic substrate and the bottom of the tank walls. Perhaps this area is a safe harbour for algae to grow? I don't really know. It definitely doesn't appear to have caused any obvious issues. The cardboard backdrop that slots in behind the tank is a nice addition, but it's not something I particularly care for. It reduces the amount of light getting into the tank and makes it harder to see your pets, so I've chosen not to use it. There are 2 main things I would change about this kit. The first is the amount of eggs it comes with. Even adding in 1/4 of the egg packet like it suggested is way too many, because if all of them had hatched, none would have survived to adulthood, so I kinda got lucky by hatching mine 15 years later. The second issue is the lid. I actually love the way it looks, but it doesn't have any air holes for air circulation, so just a couple small ones on top would have been appreciated. It doesn't easily accommodate the use of aquarium accessories either. Now, I know they clearly didn't have this in mind when designing this toy, but in my opinion, it's a bit of an oversight. We should be encouraging kids to learn about how to take proper care of these animals, so being able to easily use an airline would have been helpful. Overall though, I'm a huge fan of the Plenty O Plankton set, and I'd love to see Nickelodeon and Spongebob re-release an updated version of this in the future. I want to hear from you guys though. Would you be interested in this kit if it was still available today? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next one.